Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Jarrod Reichelt. Jarrod serves clients as a master's level psychologist and has worked in juvenile prisons, rural community health centers, in-home therapy services, inpatient psychiatric hospital for children and teens. Most recently, Jarrod has fired the man and is currently committed to helping others with making desired changes in their lives while supporting and encouraging them to live life purposefully. Welcome to the show, Jarrod.
Thank you so much. It's so happy to be here and great to see you, David and Ken. First time meeting you, but David and I go way back to elementary and high school together. He was 2 years younger than I was in school, but excited to reconnect and to share this time with you both today.
Absolutely. Awesome. And I have to insert this quick story here. Going back to junior high and high school, Jarrod, you were always a beast in the weight room and always kind of served as a mentor, someone I always looked up to. And you were always very cool to the underclassmen when some of your teammates weren't. And so that's something that decades later, I remember just being able to hang with the upperclassmen. So anyway, let's get into this interview. I'm really excited. Jarrod, first, can you start with your story and what led you into starting purpose coaching?
Yeah, strap in. It's going to be a little bit of a ride. So I just always like to first consider how interesting life is, that small little moments really can, add up and send you in a much different direction than you ever thought or intended. Because when I first started college, I was 18 years old at the time, naive, like most 18-year-olds. And I thought I had my life all planned out. I was going to be a police officer. I was going to be a personal trainer on the side because that was important to me. And so I was double majoring in criminal justice and exercise science for that first semester of school. And I had an experience when registering for the spring semester where a teacher or professor, I should say, that didn't know me really even all that well. I just had her for, it was called like a learning center class. It was like an orientation to the university where all the freshmen were in the same classes together. So she was helping out with my registration for the spring. And she sat me down and gave me this really serious look. And she told me, she said, "Jarrod, I really think you should consider something else because I think you're a little too bright to be a police officer." And that's not a diss on police officers. It's just that this was a moment where she saw something in me, saw a potential in me that I didn't see myself. And so I think that had a big impact on me and made me want to share that with others, to believe in others when they didn't believe in themselves. And so naturally, then that led me on the path of studying to become a therapist. And so I, fast forwarding now, then I was 22, just starting graduate school. So I was about then 25 when completing my program. It was a 3-year program. And I was so excited and passionate about getting out in the field. I had just finished my internship at the Kansas Juvenile Detention Center, and I was ready to change the world. However, I learned things don't, it's not quite exactly as you thought it might be. And so in the field in particular, I really struggled with what I saw as shortcomings and failures of the mental health system. And I just had several jobs where the employers just grind you out. They make you push and work and work and work. And in mental health, there's not enough funding, there's not enough resources. And so you're always asked to do more. And it started to take its toll on me. And the last formal job I had in the mental health field was at an inpatient psychiatric hospital for children and teens. And what I saw there was insurance companies controlling and dictating how long patients should be hospitalized and receiving care. I experienced kids not wanting to go back home. I experienced parents not wanting their kids to come back home. And I saw the dark side of foster care, where oftentimes kids didn't have a placement to go to. They would sleep in the foster care office with a staff when there was a shortage in housing. So I just became a little devastated seeing all the failures of these systems that were supposed to be put in place to protect and to serve those in most need. And I saw it wasn't really helping them. And that was when, and I guess even actually in this last year and a half, then I had the birth of my little girl. So I have a daughter who's now almost 14 months old. And that was just like a smack in the face. Like, what are you doing with your life? Like, how do you want to live your life? And so as I started thinking about that question more, how I want to live my life, what do I want my life to look like? It started making more and more sense to fire the man. And so that's what led to me then leaving the mental health system and now trying to help others outside the system. And I feel like serving others as a purpose coach is a helpful way to do that. And what that means to me is helping people to live the lives they want, to create the lives they want, to live their purpose, and to live more purposefully. And so long story short, then that's my mission now is helping and supporting others and making sure that help is accessible and affordable.
Very nice, very nice. And that is a very windy road to get you to where you are today, but certainly a lot of lessons picked up along the way. Now, but before we hit record, we were talking a little bit about mindset practices, and I actually said, "Time out, Jared. We got to save this for the podcast." And so, can we get into that a little bit? A lot of our audience are entrepreneurs or people that are looking to fire the man, and I think a lot of emphasis is placed on, profit margin, particular strategies, getting an LLC, et cetera. But I think something that's often overlooked is mindset. And so can you talk about some mindset practices that have been helpful to you and in your clients?
Yeah. So where I think a lot of just in general, where we fail is undervaluing the mind and undervaluing mental health. And, as I share that, what that means to me is that our thoughts really influence our whole entire lives. It's like our core self, that thinking self, is at the center, and then there's the wheel around it and little spokes then leading to the wheel. And so the mind really touches, your relationships. It touches your job performance. It touches your recreation. It touches your wellness, your health. It influences all of those. And so when I consider my own experience now being a new entrepreneur, what I think comes up most is, as far as like an emotion goes, would be fear. Would you guys agree? Was that a fair assessment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to me, that really came up. I was listening to some recent episodes of your podcast, and you had a guest on Seneca who was just brilliant. But he was speaking about that anxiety that would come up for him when he would place a larger order and go more into debt, placing a larger order. And that to me, like, whoa, I bet that is a common experience for most new entrepreneurs and even experienced entrepreneurs, is this fear of failure, fear of not succeeding, fear of losing, fear of making mistakes. And so I think fear comes up a lot for a lot of people. And so in general, humans, we are pleasure seeking and pain avoidant. So we try to do everything we can to avoid the things that make us uncomfortable. So the thought, I might fail or I will fail, the feelings and the emotion of fear then itself, and then the impact that has on you, makes then people do things to avoid that experience, or to kind of struggle with it. And so one therapy practice that came up a lot, or that was big in training because it's so manualized, is cognitive behavioral therapy. And the premise behind that is that if you change a thought, then you can change your feeling, then you can change your behavior. But I've come to find that these control type strategies don't really work that well. So it's simply telling yourself, stop thinking about that, don't think about that, or trying to replace your thought, I don't think is that helpful. And just as an example, Ken and David, imagine Okay, so here's a rule. We're going to do a little experiment. Here's my rule. Don't think about ice cream, okay? Don't even think about it. Don't allow your mind to go there, okay? But I want you to imagine, okay, so remember, don't think about it. But I want you to imagine, you know what ice cream might taste like on a really hot summer day, and just the emotions that come up when you first get that heat quenching lick of the ice cream cone and the sugar rush to your brain. But don't think about your favorite ice cream, but just imagine how that feels, that feeling of and sensation of eating an ice cream cone on a hot summer day. But don't think about it. How successful were you guys in not thinking about your favorite ice cream?
I failed.
I'm thinking of Ben and Jerry's Rocky Road right now.
Right. Vanilla bean for me.
Yeah, it's impossible. And so I brought a little thing to share with you guys today in context of this. Do you guys know what this is?
Yeah.
The Chinese finger trap.
The infamous Chinese finger trap. Yeah. So you put your fingers in and you try your hardest to pull them out, but what happens?
Nothing.
Tightens up.
It tightens up. Yeah. And to me, that's what happens when we try to change our thinking or try to avoid things that make us uncomfortable, is that it actually gets a stronger holding on you. And so the practice then is to accept these thoughts for what they are, just thoughts, and to make space for the feelings that come up that are uncomfortable. And as you do that, then you can start to free yourself. And so I know this is a lot, so be patient with me, please. So the practice then is working to accept the thoughts that come up, because we can't control our thoughts. We can't change our thoughts, but we can change how we relate and respond to our thoughts. So for example, then when the thought comes up that I'm a failure or I'm going to fail, rather than saying, I'm not going to fail, again, that's not a very helpful practice. It's acknowledging that you're having the thought that you're going to fail. And that's it, acknowledging the thought. And there's techniques to do that. One is to simply tell yourself when you notice the thought, I'm having the thought that I'm going to fail. That in itself creates some degree of separation space from the thought. Another silly way to do it would be to like hum or sing the thought in the tune of like happy birthday. So it'd be like, I'm having the thought that I am a failure. I'm having the thought that I am a failure. And that in itself also creates some separation, because the problem is that we think that our thoughts are real. We believe our thoughts. We believe the things we tell ourselves. And you had on another guest just in the last episode that spoke a little bit more about thoughts. And, a lot of research shows that 80% of our thought content is negative. And so if we believe 80% of the things we're telling ourselves then that are negative, what kind of toll is that going to have on a person's emotional self? And so the practice again is to accept the thoughts for what they are, just thoughts. They're not truth always. They're just a story that the mind tells you. And the next then piece is to create space for the feelings that come up. So instead of trying to avoid those feelings or to fight against those feelings, to get into a practice of observing them and to bring your breath to the space in your body that you feel those thoughts. And that's called expansion then. So actually visualizing yourself making more space in your body for that emotion. And what you're doing is you're just observing it. You're noticing it. You're not trying to change it. You're just watching it with the same curiosity as a scientist making a new discovery. You're just observing and watching. And again, what that does is allows it then to create more space for it, but then also to be released. Because just like the trap, the more we fight a feeling or emotion, the stronger the hold it takes on us. And then the biggest component of this is to create a list of the values that are most meaningful and important to you, that provide the most meaning to you in your life. So values then being who you want to be, who you want to be for others, how you want to relate to others, and then making sure that you're taking effective action towards those values. And in an instance of the thought that I'm a failure, so again, you're accepting the thought for what it is, just a thought. It's not the truth. It's not reality. And even if it were the truth, it's not a helpful thought. And so it's not helpful to then get stuck on it or to fixate on it, but just to notice it. And then when the feelings come up, usually with the thought that I'm a failure, then it's like a fear response, which is going to be more fight or flight. Your body's activated and stimulated in that sense. And so you're not going to be making the best decisions and choices in that moment. So it's important then to just notice the feelings, make space for the feelings, and watch as they go up and down and up and maybe then down. But you're just observing, because they do pass. If you spend enough time watching your feelings and emotion, they do pass. And then when you're having the thought, I'm a failure, you're making sure that you're committing to choices that are aligned with your values and what's important to you. Because even if we're not feeling the best, or no matter what our circumstances or any catastrophic event that pops up, we can still make choices that are aligned with our values and what's most important to us. And that's what's going to help us be successful.
So Jarrod, that was a pretty amazing analogy, and great like tips and tactics to kind of, I don't say like deal with the negative thoughts, but and one statistic that you mentioned was 80% of thoughts that come in are negative. That's huge. And so I really like that. And I think the topic we're discussing today is oftentimes overlooked in our industry, and something that, David mentioned before the show is that, like, grinding it out and is kind of like a badge of honor in entrepreneurship. But I think, you will go down a deep, dark path if you don't have the right mindset. And those tips that you shared were gold. So my next question is, in your words, what does it mean to live a purposeful life, and how does somebody know if they're not on that path?
A lot of that is in what I shared about the values. To me, living a purposeful life is being clear about what your values are, and making choices that are aligned with your values and committing to that. And the goal is not perfection. No one person is going to hit their values 100% of the time, but it's an act of getting back on the path as many times as you need to live in accordance with your values. Because to me, living congruently with our values, what we cherish the most in our lives, that is what provides the most meaning and purpose in our lives. And so then we have to consciously choose the things that are aligned with our values. So if I'm an entrepreneur, and what's important to me is being flexible and available for my family, and working for the man wouldn't necessarily afford that as an option, because you're stuck on the strict schedule. Sometimes you're expected to come in even more, wherever the case might be. But if you value time with your family, then as an entrepreneur, yet you're spending all of your time grinding on the business and neglecting the value that you had, which was spending time with your family, then you're going to really emotionally feel that disconnect. It might not like cognitively click that you're not living in accordance with your values, but you might just kind of feel stressed, overwhelmed all the time. You might actually then be more irritable towards your family. You might feel tired when you're not working then, and then you're unable to spend time with your family, and then you're feeling guilty about not being able to spend time with your family. Or you might just be having some anxiety and depression as well. I think a lot of anxiety and depression actually comes from living outside of our values, and or not having values that help to steer or to guide our daily choices.
Sure. Yeah, that really makes sense. And one quick follow-up question. Now, for all the listeners that, are thinking of what you just mentioned, and you said earlier that, you have to kind of acknowledge the thoughts that are coming in, and then just kind of create that separation. Now, is the brain like, is it like a muscle where in terms of like, if you exercise it a lot, it gets stronger, and like over time, are you able to like really control those better, or is it always the same?
It is most definitely like a muscle. And again, your host last week talked about neuroplasticity too, which is just a fascinating concept. And so for those at home, neuroplasticity is that your brain can change both its like physical form, its structures can change, as well as its activity can change over time when really focusing on a new skill. And so with what I'm describing, with working on acceptance, it incorporates a lot of mindfulness practices. And so to put mindfulness as simply as possible, it is being aware of and observing the present moment as it is without a need to judge or to evaluate. It's just more of a role of observing. And so in this particular example, when practicing mindfulness, it helps with increasing the gray matter in your prefrontal cortex. So this part of your brain right here, which is like the center of the brain for our executive functions, which are crucial for anyone trying to be a successful business person. And so it's being able to plan, being able to regulate your emotions, being able to self-reflect and self-observe, to self-evaluate your performance. It is so many other things. It's primarily though the focusing on like on emotion regulation and planning and decision making and being flexible in problem solving. Those are all executive functions. So yes, practice with mindfulness helps to increase that matter in your brain while also improving the activity of that brain. So making it easier over time. And the mind is just a crazy, crazy thing. It really does wander so much throughout the day. And I couldn't tell you exactly how many thoughts we have each day, but yeah, again, 80% of those are negative. And so through this practice, you will notice over time that these distressing thoughts happen less often. And if they do occur, then they become less distressing or bothersome for you. And so it does take a lot of practice. It takes conscious effort and time and energy to make any change. And so by committing to this practice, it most definitely does become easier over time, and you will become more competent in your ability to accept thoughts and challenging and distressing feelings and to act more in accordance with your values.
I really like your response there. And I like thinking of the brain as a muscle in that you're not just stuck with the one that you have, right? It's something that you can change and improve on. And so I'd like to turn the corner and talk about, some actionable habits and so my question to you is, what are some meaningful habits that you've formed in your life? And what do those look like? And as you're going through these, if you have any that relate to managing your cell phone, I'd love to hear about that, because that's something that I think is really not talked about as much as it should be, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. And gosh, I was actually one of those people that resisted getting a smartphone for so long. I was probably the last of my friends because I saw what it was doing. I saw that everyone around me was spending way too much time looking at their screen. So I'll start with that then, David. What I think is most helpful with reducing, the phone screen time is, well, for one, considering the most difficult time. So let's come back then. When do you think you might struggle the most with your cell phone?
When I don't have anything on my calendar. So like in the evenings,
Okay.
it's something that I like. This is my question to you, but like I put it in my office and I can't even be around it because it interferes. Like when I'm playing with my children, I'll just pop it open subconsciously. Yeah. And, when I'm working full time, that evening time is so precious. I need to guard it. And so, but yeah, I would say when I have slack time.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of that like reaching for your phone impulsively, that's the dopamine addiction. that, every time you grab your phone and check your notification or something else, boom, a little jolt of dopamine, feel good in the brain. So what you described that you do yourself is, I think, the most helpful, is we have to put it out of reach. And so from the clients that I've worked with in the past, especially teenagers, it seems like nighttime is the most problematic time. It's the lying in bed with the phone in hand. And so in these instances, yes, to put the phone in another room, or to put the phone, far away so it's inconvenient to get to, those I think are the most helpful ways to break that cycle, because it is just so easy to grab, especially just as we are so accustomed to, the instant gratification of getting what we want when we want, with phones and how it provides access to information that we might want. So definitely keeping the phone away. And the healthy and helpful habits that I have formed over the years, number one has been prioritizing self-care time in the mornings. I think especially as a clinician, this became so important because my day was so full already. And so I forced myself to wake up early. And so for years now, I've been a 5 a.m. riser, and it annoys a lot of people in my life sometimes, but I freaking love that morning time when no one else is up. It's almost like the whole world is sleeping still, and it's just you and yourself. I think that's a perfect time to just find a new book and to read a book. So I like to read for an hour a day. So I prioritize that each morning, and coffee goes great with that. And then I've really found it helpful to keep up a regular exercise routine. So this is one of those things that I've fallen in and out of over the years, and more so fallen back into, and just seeing the benefits from exercising and working out in the mornings. That's been tremendous too. It's I just think it's a good way to boost your energy, while also to have like a calmness throughout the day. Also, I practice a mindfulness meditation each morning as well. So I'll sit for 15 minutes, and all I'll do in that practice is focus on my breath. And the practice then comes from, whenever I notice my mind wandering, which it does, is to recognize what I'm thinking about, where my mind's going, and then to bring it right back to my breath. And so I might say, and usually in the morning, it's like planning the day. So I'll be sitting there and I'll name what my thought is. So I'll be sitting there, I'll say, oh, okay, I'm planning what I'm going to do this morning. I'm planning what I'm going to do this afternoon. Okay, come back to my breath. And I'll do that for 15 minutes. And the mind might wander a million times, but I just bring it back 1,000,001 times, right back to the breath. And so I've found that to be crucial. And also, I'll end on this then. I think cold exposure is a great practice for anyone to get into. And so when I don't have the luxury of having an ice bath available, or a cold mountain stream or lake to get into, I take cold showers. So every single day I take a cold shower for a few purposes. One, it helps to release a great dose of endorphins, with, again, that calm to follow. So I find that really helps with my concentration and focus throughout the day. But then also, I think it's so important to practice things that make you uncomfortable, or to practice acceptance and calm in a state of chaos. And so cold water is a great way to practice that. For a lot of people, they tense up and they react. But the practice is, and the tip and secret is, that you have to release and relax and accept the discomfort in order to be most successful in that exposure. And so I like to take a cold shower each day. I think it's just a great way to make myself uncomfortable each day, and to practice calming myself in a state of distress.
Yeah, Jarrod, I think all those are like excellent tips, and any of the listeners, I would maybe back that up and re-listen to them, and pick some of those gems out of there. One quick question for you before I move on to my real question is, you mentioned cold showers every day. Do you take those at 5 a.m. when everybody's sleeping, or no?
Yeah, normally for me, it's best like after a workout or like a hot activity. And so it's the cold showers are easiest in the summertime after working outside and coming in right away and taking a cold shower. And they're the hardest on a cold winter morning
Yeah.
when, first thing. So no, it's not right away when I get out of bed, but it does happen when usually just
Yeah.
the first shower of the day.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've taken cold showers before, and that is definitely, if you're able to take a cold shower every day, you have a steel trap of a mind, because that is something that is very tough to do. And if I did that at 5 a.m., everybody in my house would be waking up. I would be yeah. So awesome. So let's get right into another very very crucial place where I think a lot of people get, and I think you'll be able to help out a lot of people listening here, is when people are stuck in a rut. And let's kind of paint the picture. Let's say maybe someone got sick. Maybe even COVID, or maybe whatever. They were sick for 3-5 days, and they're kind of like off their schedule. They're behind with work. They're behind with life, and they're just in a rut. And so and then like everything is just like pressure is piling on them, and then they're just stuck in a rut. Like, do you have any tips or strategies for them to kind of bounce back and get back on track?
For those individuals, that's a tough climb. That can be hard. And I think most of us have probably been in that place at least once in our life. And so I acknowledge that that's really difficult, really challenging. And some people might even want to give up in that moment. So what I would suggest, or just what I think about in that, is identify what's the major problem or what's causing them the most distress. Maybe it's something that they need to get done. And from in that place that they are, it could seem extremely overwhelming or even impossible. And so looking at that big item that needs to get done and trying to find the smaller chunks, the smaller pieces that they could start working on that might help to alleviate some of that pressure, some of that stress and overwhelm, and just to instill some feelings of success and confidence in that. And so that's one place to start. And also it's important to consider and to come back again to those values. And so in that moment, what might be some values that are being neglected? What are some things important to you in your life that you're passionate about or that are most meaningful to you that you aren't giving the attention to right now? And then to recognize and identify those, and then to take steps towards those values. One thing that I believe in and try to instill in my life and my clients is the concept of radical responsibility. And so in this moment, looking hard deep in the self and asking, what is it that I'm doing right now that's creating a lot of this challenge or a lot of this stress? What is it that I'm doing that's got me stuck in a rut? Because I do believe that we are the creators of our own destiny, and that we are the artists that paint our lives. And so looking at what's my role here, and what changes am I willing to make then to fix that or to get out of that. And also then obviously coming back to the mindfulness practice also, and helping to manage a lot of those thoughts that might come up with getting stuck in the rut. And then also coming back to taking care of the self. I think when in that rut, what's most tempting is to just fight, push through. But as you do that, you're sacrificing yourself. And so to come back to the self and to evaluate, where am I at as far as my health, my happiness, my wellness? What do I need to do to bolster my wellness then that would help to make some of these things a little more easy or a little bit more manageable?
Your response on the radical responsibility, I think is really well noted. And it's been interesting as we've talked to entrepreneurs at various stages of their business and development. It seems like you see a common theme of people that have the ability to say, I messed up. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'm doing better next time. Those people seem to be the most successful. the people that point to external factors and say, it's their fault, or my supplier is late, or I didn't get a response from this person. And they point to other people that are out of their control as the source of the pain. That seems to be the people that are not successful. And so it's something that, as a new parent, and you are as well, that's something that I really want to instill in my children. And it's something that I don't think I'll ever fully master, but I think Ken and I are constantly trying to get better at, what are we in control of, and how can we improve on what we're in control of. And so I really like that response. So I'd like to turn the corner a little bit and talk about um, balance. And that's one thing that when we talk about, identifying your values and, executing on those values. For instance, I'll give a personal example. My highest value would be family. That's above all else, it's family. And so you would look at that and say, well, perhaps you would spend all of your time with your family, 24 hours a day. And that, there are other responsibilities out there, right? There's the mortgage. There's the, you need a roof over your head. You need children. You need to have food. And so I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with is striking that balance. And I know I certainly do, in that I work from home, and at any given time I can get up from my chair and go hang out with my kiddos. But I also have goals that are important to me in business, that are putting food on the table for my children. And so can you talk about, once somebody identifies, here are my values, approaching this in a practical way, and in, aiming towards being in balance?
Yeah, I would agree that I think that's one of the greatest challenges to all of our lives, and then to especially entrepreneurs, because what I've learned about being an entrepreneur, and I've even helped out small businesses before, it's that fires pop up that need put out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the damn time, new fires are popping up. And so it can become overwhelming then trying to balance and manage it all. And so what I found to be most helpful once having the set of values is breaking them down into little action steps. Like, so with valuing your family, David, with that being the number one value in your life, what then might be little action steps or things that you do that foster that or support that value of yours? Just to use you as an example.
Yeah. So I, from 8 to 9, I block off on my calendar and I have breakfast with my kids. And then I have a pretty hard stop at 5 p.m. where I put pencils down on anything. And I would say I stick to that generally, probably 95% of the time. And so those have been, my calendar kind of dictates my life and keeps me moving in the right direction. So those have been some things that I've done. But there's still a huge slug of the day, right? That, and I think it's harder when you're working from home, right? I think a lot of people probably saw this during COVID is my kid's right here. And I prefer to go play T-ball. and so it's, I don't know, it's kind of anyway, so that's how I handle it.
Yeah, I think that's the best start, is to set a schedule and to be, even to give yourself permission to be rigid with that too. That at 5 o'clock, no matter what, that is the cutoff. And that is when I'll be spending time with my family and ending my work. And so I have found that to be really helpful with maintaining that balance, and is making a schedule. It really does take, thought and consideration to sit down and to list out your values, to think of ways that you'll, work towards your values or commit to your values, and then fitting that into your daily schedule. And so, with you, breakfast is one way. Breakfast time with your kids, with your family, is one way that you commit to the family time. And then after 5, maybe you have other activities that you guys plan too. So you've made your list about things that you'll do to support your value. And then you made a plan. 5 o'clock, boom, that's my cutoff. And that's when I'm with my family. And so that's what I would encourage, all the listeners at home to do, is to plan out how you'll spend your time, and to stick with that plan, because it's easy to give up or sacrifice one or a few values a day in order to chase the next deal or to chase the next pay increase. But there's always a cost to those. And so the cost is your values. And when you're making the decision to neglect the values, then you're also then adversely affecting your wellness, your health, your mood, your happiness. And so there's all those things to consider and to contemplate when trying to find that balance. Is, if I go too strong in one way, then I'm going to be missing out on the other.
Definitely. Well, this has been an awesome interview, and want to be respectful of your time. Ken, why don't we get into the fire round?
Yeah, sounds good. Jarrod, are you ready?
I am as ready as ever. Sure.
All right. What is your favorite book?
Easily Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I think that's where a lot of my just like my frame of reference and concept really came from, was Man's Search for Meaning.
Awesome. I'm going to add that to my list. What are your hobbies?
I am an outdoor enthusiast. So any outdoor adventure, I'm in for it. So I mostly love hiking, camping, backpacking, kayaking. One of my favorite things to do that I can't do now as a father, but I loved doing before, was just bringing my backpack with my tent and all my other essentials, and hiking up in a mountain in the middle of nowhere and camping for a night or two and coming back. And can't do that now because it's not safe, but yeah, outdoors for sure. Those are my favorite things.
Awesome. What is the one thing you do not miss about working for the man?
Probably continuing to participate in a system that I know is not working. It's just seeing, okay, we keep doing this again and again, and seeing it's not working, but why aren't we changing it? And so it's, I think that was always my biggest struggle. So it's nice to be free of that now.
Okay, awesome. What do you think sets apart successful e-commerce entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think a lot of it has to do with what we talked about today, and that's our response to uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, and mainly then the circumstance fear, or fear of failure. And so I think those that are successful are those that are able to be flexible and to adapt and have more of an optimism, versus those that are unsuccessful might, one failure to them could mean, okay, I'll never try again. And so it's a matter of responding to the failures and seeing them as more opportunities than a shortcoming.
Absolutely. Great answer. I totally agree with you. David, do you want to close out the show?
Yeah, Jarrod, how can people get a hold of you?
They can contact me via email. So Jarrod, Jarrod .Reichelt. So that's REICHELT @gmail.com. Or they can find me on Instagram, which is at the Purpose Coach 4U. And also I'll soon, hopefully by the end of this week, be launching my very own YouTube channel and podcast as well. So those will probably be similar to the Purpose Coach. So I don't have those set yet, but I'll definitely be listing that information on my Instagram.
Awesome. And we'll post links to all of that in the show notes. And Jarrod was kind enough to offer 20% off any individual coaching services if you mention Firing the Man. So Jarrod, want to thank you for being a guest on Firing the Man podcast, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, thank you both so much. It was a blast.
Thanks, Jarrod.